October 20th, 2021 to order. Roll call, please, clerk.
Mayor Copeland is absent. Tom Baylor.
Here.
Kathy Sherman.
Here.
Jeff Guard.
Here.
Melina Meyer
Here.
is here. Ann Schaefer.
Here.
David Allison.
Here.
And David Gleason.
Here.
That is everyone.
Thanks, Susan. The first thing on the agenda is the Cordova Volunteer Fire Department update to council, and looks like we have Chief Hicks and Paul Tremblay in front of us ready to present.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And thank you for the time to allow us to come and give a presentation of the needs of the fire department. Last July, we presented some information, and at the moment we are just hanging on barely. City manager and myself came up with an idea to hire a temporary person, and that's only through December. So we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Okay, the first slide is our mission statement. I'm not going to try to do death by PowerPoint. Everybody knows how to read, so I'm not going to read verbatim the slides. I can't stand it myself, so I'm sure other people don't. So, yeah, that's our mission statement. And then this is how we do it: through training, education, professionalism, disaster intervention, planning, and equipment. It takes a lot of time to do what we do. Right now, we have approximately 25 volunteers. We got kind of behind the power curve because of COVID, like everything else. And so we didn't have any recruitment for the last year and a half. It's been really tough. And we've been doing our video meetings like everybody else in the world. It makes it really difficult. We have picked up, I think, 4 volunteers in the last month, new folks, some with experience, some with no experience. So that takes additional time and training to get them up to speed. So we have 2 full-time paid staff, Paul and Brandon are our 2 full-time guys. And then Chris, he is part-time or full-time temporary until the end of the year. He's being funded by COVID money, is my understanding. The EMS crew are 24/7, 365. They work 12-hour shifts, and we have a customer. Mm-hmm. Gotta wait and see what it's an ambulance call. Okay, so we have a customer. Anyway, the ambulance crews are on 12-hour shifts, sometimes a couple weeks at a time. That means that they are ready to respond at a moment's notice. We have 2 shifts, a day shift and a night shift. They can't go out and have a beer. They can't go out the road. They can't do anything. Their life is consumed by volunteering for the city to respond for medical emergencies. They are our most overtaxed folks. Fortunately, we don't have too many fire calls. As I say that, our numbers are down. We're overdue for a big one. Every few years, we do get a pretty good sized fire. But we've been very fortunate. People are getting more and more fire safe. The fire officers are volunteers for the most part. That would be me. The company officers, they handle the after hours calls, the carbon monoxide alarms that goes off, the cat in the tree, the really minor calls that don't need a full response. It really requires a home visit to see what response we do have to do. And so there's about 8 of us, I think, that are on that list right now. We don't really have any mutual aid. Our only mutual aid is Mile 13 Airport. We have used a crash truck on warehouse fires and things like that before. But outside of that, we have no mutual aid like they do in your bigger cities. I was down in Michigan this summer. They had a really large fire, and they had, I think, 8 or 9 different responding departments from around the surrounding area that were within a few miles of us. The federal and state grant funding, we've been living by those for years. We try to get everything we can through grants. All of our apparatus we currently are operating have been through state or federal grants. We've gotten several $1 million over the year in grants. It's kept us functional equipment-wise. Ambulance billing, for a long time, the hospital was unable to figure out how to bill for the ambulance. And over the years, we lost quite a bit of money on that. We went to a third-party billing system now, and we've been collecting pretty good ambulance revenue for the last several years. And that goes into the Emergency Vehicle Acquisition Fund, so that if we can't get grants, we can take the money out of there to buy new vehicles so that the city doesn't have to pony up for new vehicles. We have 2 frontline pumpers, a heavy rescue vehicle. That's got your jaws of life and all your tools. It's a big tool truck. 2 frontline ambulances, a harbor vehicle, and the bumper tanker out at the substation. The only vehicle on that list that was purchased by the city was the harbor fire vehicle years ago. The rest of those were all grants, mostly with a 10% match. Here's our current roster, 23 members. 40 is our ideal number. We've had as many as 53 in the past. Our numbers do fluctuate. They've been declining in recent years, I think mainly because people move away, they have jobs that interfere with them volunteering, that sort of thing. But we've been pretty stationary now at about 23. A third of our membership has over 10 years experience. There's 5 of us that are over 20 years, which is about 20% of the department. The 32 number is actually going into 33, that's me, but that's the number of years these people have. Mr. Groff just retired this year after 47 years on the department. And 3 members have 10 plus years, 14, 11, and 10. And then our younger members, 2 to 9, and we have 8 members with less than a year of experience. So those folks, we have to bring them up to speed to help, with us older folks. And that again takes time and training. And you want to take care of the graph?
Yeah, so since 2014, we've been keeping track of our numbers. And obviously, you can see that the trend is going downhill. Like Chief Hicks said, our ideal number is around 40 members, and that allows each member to take some time off when they're on the ambulance call. It allows our fire officers to take time off and go on vacations and things like that. But when we're getting down into the 30s and the 20s, it's a little difficult to start covering our shift schedules, especially on the EMS side. This is the count of incidents by month in 2020, and I created these graphs to show you where our shortfalls are. In the month of January, when everybody's in town, we don't have people out fishing, the Forest Service guys or gals aren't out in the woods playing, everybody's in town, a few people go out on vacations. We do have a high call volume in the winter times, but it's the summer months that we really are short-staffed. And that's from May through September. And our call volumes, because of fishing, because of the canneries, we do get more customers. This is the incident by hour in 2020. We can see that our schedule runs from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the majority of our calls in 2020 were from 9 a.m. through, was that 1300, 6 p.m.? That's when we can't cover our shifts for the majority of the time. People can't take time off work, people are out fishing, people are out in the woods, people are playing, and doesn't allow time for people to run. In 2021, to date, you can see that our graph goes up in the summertime. Again, in the wintertime, we're okay. We do have coverage, but in the summertime is when everybody starts to get outside and enjoy life, and that starts in May. May, we had 22 calls, June, we had 14, and July, 19, August, 23, and September, we had 23 calls. The highlighted areas for those months are the times where we can't cover our shifts from the May timeframe through September, and that's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. This is military time, 0600 to 1800 is kind of the time frame that we can't cover. So it's very difficult. Myself running through the whole summer was very taxing. We had 2 members of our department that ran 8 weeks straight. That's Sunday through Sunday, 12 hours a day, and they're all volunteers. Again, our biggest gap in EMS coverage are between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. weekdays. The ideal number for each shift is 3 medics per shift. for a total of 6 for the 24-hour period. At our current staffing level, we only have enough volunteers to run 2 persons per shift. And like Mike said, we have people that are new, and we're trying to match them up with experienced folks, but the number is dwindling. Annually, the members of the Cordova Volunteer Fire Department are on call 33,000 hours a year. These hours include the EMS company and fire officers on duty. This would equate to $166,400 as stated in previous reports to City Council, and that's based on an average of $5 an hour on call. EMS crew run 24/7, 365, 2 12-hour shifts. Our fire officers are on 24 hours a day for 7-day shifts and rotate between the fire officers that we have on duty now. Currently, our 2021 budget breakdown is $352,000. This includes wages and benefits for 2 paid staff, the fire department operations, training and compensation for the fire and EMS personnel. And our budgetary recommendation going into 2022 would be to hire an additional paid full-time firefighter medic at approximately $75,000, but that number is going to drop a little bit because if we hire somebody in January, they won't become full-time in PERS until June. So that number will be about 66,000. Knowing our numbers aren't going to be up very high on the volunteer side with medics, we would also like to hire 2 seasonal staff from May through September. And so that would be $23,000 for each of them. And that's at $25 an hour. Total annual cost approximately $120,000. That, of course, that number would drop just a little bit because of the additional paid staff wouldn't be at $75,000. So that's just an approximate number. So if you add the $121,000 on top of the $352, it would be $470,000.
And another thing that kind of put us behind this year was that our second paid person took a 3-month he was gone?
3 months hiatus.
3-month leave of absence. And when he came back, he turned around and quit. So that left Paul for over 6 months, I think, before we hired Brandon on, right? Mm-hmm. So he was by himself for 6 months, juggling all the reports, the grants, keeping the equipment ready. Well, when during the day you got to check all your air packs and things like that, and make sure everything's ready to go. One guy. Occasionally he'd get some help from volunteers would come by and help out with stuff. And on our Thursday night maintenance and meetings and stuff, we would do that. So he was pretty much running the place by himself for 6 months, which is quite a workload.
And so the reason why we bring this up is if we don't hire an additional paid full-time staff to help cover year-round and 2 additional seasonals, you probably won't have an ambulance running next summer. I can't do it alone, and I can't do it all year. As a department head and a salaried employee, I don't get paid overtime. So we need the help. The paid staff is only to supplement the volunteers, not take over the volunteers. So we do what we can to help everybody out. So we're open for questions.
One more thing. The papers I passed out beforehand, I did kind of an impromptu survey of our volunteers, and these were email responses that I got back from them. And now you can read this at your leisure later, because I don't want to take up too much time here. But these are actual responses. I made them anonymous, so you don't know who said what. These are actual responses of the issues that our volunteers are seeing from their eyes and why they are having a hard time, responding and doing what they do. So please take the time to read these when you get a chance. Questions?
Okay, thank you. Let's go around the room. Melina on the phone, do you have any questions for Paul or Chief Hicks?
Yeah, I have a couple questions and comments. One thing is if you could email me the responses that you passed around or put it in my box there at the city, I would be really interested in reading those.
Oh, yeah, we can.
And I guess just reading this presentation and hearing you guys talk about it, sounds like we really do need to hire some more people seasonally and full-time. year round. The other concern that I have is keeping our volunteer pool really high. Even if we do hire these people, it sounds like we still need more volunteers to keep them in the department. So I guess my question is do we offer anything to our volunteers for fire and EMT? Like, do they get to use the darky, the pool, any of the city services? Is there something that we could do? Or that doesn't replace pay in any way, but kind of showing our appreciation. Do we do any of those things for our volunteers currently, or can we?
Yeah, currently, we, last budget session in 2020, going into 2021, the city council approved a compensation increase from $10 to $20, so that does help. And then also, I think the only other compensation or benefit that the volunteers get is seasonal passes are reduced for volunteers. So whatever the cost, I think Bedarkie is $100 a year. And then I think the combo pass pool is like $150. And then on the volunteer side, we reduce that by $50 out of our checking account. So it's $50 is what they pay. And I don't think very many people take advantage of that. I think 3 or 4 of us take advantage of the Bedarkie pool area.
I guess it would be something to ask the volunteers, but I'd be interested in looking into just waiving that, not even doing a reduced fee, and maybe even doing family passes, because it doesn't just affect volunteers, it definitely affects the whole family, having a member being able to do that. But just a thought. Thanks.
Okay, going around the room, Councilman Guard.
My comments, thanks everybody for everything they're doing. And I don't think I have any questions at this point in time. The presentation has been fairly well and informative. Give us something to talk about and think about. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Allison.
Yeah, couple things. I'd go along with Melina on doing whatever we can for incentivizing volunteers. We're pretty lucky to get by with mostly volunteer crews. Do you know off the top of your head, or maybe the manager might know, what reduced or lack of service would do for insurance rates in our community?
No idea.
I know that response time affects
So
ratings, but
So our ISO rating would drop if our response time, which is we like to set the bar at 6-minute response times, and we do really, really well. I think only one or 2 times the last 5 years, it was like a 15-minute response time. We like to stay within that 6-minute time frame, but our ISO rating for the whole community would go up a little bit, and that would change what you pay your insurance on your insurance for your property. So it would go up a little bit, but not very much, maybe $100 a year per point, I think.
yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is everything isn't affected in black and white, I guess, so it affects me $100, but you multiply that by 800 times and you're talking real money sooner or later, community-wide, as far as those rates go. So I think we need to be conscious of that, and I guess I just go back to, we are pretty lucky to be able to get by on mostly volunteers, and if we have to start paying a few more people to keep our community safe, what's one life worth, in the scheme of things. One last question, I guess, is tell me a story about the fire truck that's out at 6 Mile parked outside. What's the update on that? We've probably been told before, but
It's old. Was it 3 years ago? 3 years ago, we were doing our triannual engine pump testing, where we have a vendor come down and do a full vehicle chassis inspection, and we also do that for our ISO rating. The vehicle failed the inspection. We were fortunate enough to purchase a 1994 vehicle from Valdez for, I think, as a cost of $1,800 round trip ticket. But the vehicle is supposed to be disposed of when the city shop gets a chance. I mean, it looks like a nice little yard ornament, but yeah, it should be moved.
Okay, yeah, I just make that comment because I guess it was bad optics to me and some guests that I had last year to have the snowplow shovel snow right up against it, and just bad optics. So you know, park that thing up here at City Hall might be a better spot for it. Anyway, certainly support you guys and
Thank you.
appreciate everything you guys are doing, and we'll see if we can't figure something out in the budget.
Okay, Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, so if we were to do this, maybe just lay out how this would help you out, you know, in the immediate sense.
So yeah, if we hired the additional paid staff, that would take duties from me so I could enjoy my life as well instead of running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But also, I know when we started doing the ambulance billing back in 2012, we were doing paper copies. Everybody was writing down their run reports. Well, we've transitioned into digital copying, and it takes longer to do a digital copy or digital run reports. And so what we have found is as volunteers start to thin out, that all those duties that the volunteers are tasked to do kind of get shifted over to the paid side. So like fire chief is gone, that goes on to the deputy chief. The deputy chief is gone, all that work goes to the fire marshal, and then it just rolls downhill. So for the immediate effect, if we don't hire an additional paid staff, I can't run every day all year. So having additional paid staff, we can rotate during the days and at least get a week off every 2 weeks. And right now, starting, I think it was in September when we hired the additional part-time person, they were able to run every day for 2.5 months, Sunday through Sunday, 12 hours a day. Now, as we're moving into the wintertime, we're getting more volunteers back, a few of them. We're getting a few volunteers back who are able to offset that. So their paid staff is able to take at least a weekend off every week or every 2 weeks, and they can rotate in and out. Does that make sense? Or
Oh, yeah,
okay.
no, and I just wanted you to explain it, you know, so if anybody's actually listening to our meeting, they, you know, get to hear stuff like that. And then the other thing is, do you have somebody lined up already?
For the full-time, yes, actually, Chris Iazone would be right behind me as the temporary, full-time temporary right now. Okay. But for the 2 seasonals, no, we would have to put that out for hire.
Okay, that's it. Thanks, Paul.
Councilman Schaefer.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and also thank you to all the volunteers for all of the work that you do. So just to clarify, you said that these positions would be inclusive of that temporary position that's right now, so not in addition to it?
Right.
Okay. Okay, just so I was keeping track. And then do you envision these positions for just the next year as kind of a stopgap measure as like recruitment efforts increase? Or is this something that you see or would like to see for perpetuity or moving
That's a
forward?
great question. The number one, hire an additional paid full-time staff. That would be a full-time permanent paid position forever. And then if and when we do get additional volunteers who can help offset the cost on or help offset the run calls for EMS, we wouldn't really necessarily need to hire the 2 seasonals. But as we see it right now, if we have scheduled an EMT1 class coming up in January, that's a 3-month class. We wouldn't necessarily put them out on the street by themselves to run. That's not professional, and we wouldn't do that to anybody. So it would be probably a whole year for someone to get enough experience to actually go out on themselves. So we'd like to hire temporary people for the summertime, just 2, and
Summer.
maybe next year too. So 2022, depending on our volunteer numbers, 23, 24, we don't know. We don't know.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I also like the idea of potentially looking into other incentives we can offer volunteers to make it a little more attractive to them and their families as well. So I would be interested in looking into that. And do you have plans for increased outreach and recruitment? I don't know how you usually go about getting volunteers.
Well, we usually have an open house at least once or twice a year, which we haven't been able to do that yet because of the COVID stuff. And when the Halloween party's coming up, so we usually use that to draw folks in and try to recruit there. We put stuff out on the internet, things like that. One of the things we kicked around, and this is just, I'm throwing it out there as an idea, is some sort of a retirement program for the volunteers. Let's say they put in $100 a year, the city matches that $100 a year, and we'd have to go through our brokers and put it in like a 401k kind of thing. And at the end of a certain period of time, 3 to 5 years, they get vested kind of like PERS, and then they would get that money. So, or if they decide to put $5,000 in that account, the city would match $5,000. There would have to be a cap, and I'm just throwing these out there for discussion. But you might get people to stick around. So like Mr. Groff, he just retired after 47 years. You would have a nice bank account after 47 years of volunteering for the city at a very small cost to the city. It's an idea that, and it wouldn't cost the city a whole lot, I don't think, to do that, because they would just match what that person put in. If they decide not to put anything in, the city doesn't have to match that, and there would have to be, of course, a cap, kind of like a deferred comp kind of thing. That's just one idea we've been kicking around. Another idea is, and this would hurt the city's budget somewhat, is that possibly give volunteers break on their property taxes or city sales tax. To be fair across the board, though, it's kind of tough if you're giving a break to a homeowner that's on the volunteer department versus a renter, where's their equal incentive. So it's just ideas we've been kicking around, and it would take a little bit of legwork to maybe make it happen.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Baylor.
Okay, so we're running up against the clock. Are we going to spend a little extra time?
You go quick, and then I have a few.
So I believe you said for the full-time employee was $25 an hour. Is that what you're basing it on?
Yes.
But that would be approximately $57,000 a year. So is the rest of that $75,000, is that to cover other expenses?
Yeah, that's the compensation, insurance compensation and
So
stuff.
that covers our cost.
Yeah, and that's just the full-time permanent paid
But
position.
I guess that's the true cost of that
It's
employee.
true cost, yeah. And for the additional, it's going to be a little bit lower than the 75, but I did the exact same thing. I did the $25 an hour, but speaking with finance, the PERS wouldn't start until June or July, 6 months. So the number would come down a little bit for the first year, like 66 or 67,000.
And then they would be on with the rest of the
And then they would
union
be
as far
on.
as raises go.
Yep.
Okay. So not knowing how the fire department operates, I'll stick with something I know how it operates, and that it'll get back to your question, is the streets crew. They're not always busy, but we have to have them all, and they do find jobs for these guys to do, and when it snows, we need every one of them. You've been running this, not you, the fire department's been going for forever without this extra paid employee. So what is this paid employee going to do? And you're actually going to have a paid extra guy there 8 hours a day. What is he going to be doing if there's no calls? Is there something productive? What's his role?
Yeah, so the role would be, we're splitting up, the both positions would be firefighter medics. So they're both firefighter medics, but one would focus mainly on the EMS side, and one would focus mainly on the fire side. And there's jobs to do every day to keep our vehicles maintained and clean, and equipment checks, everything.
I'm talking, that's
That's the paid guys.
the two seasonal. I'm talking about, I think you're talking about one iron guy, one
Yep.
full-time guy.
Mhm.
So what you're saying is you're going to be doing maintenance and other things around the shop
Yes.
to keep busy.
Yep.
And that was previously done by volunteers. Is that why we didn't need anybody before? One's shaking no, and
No, I think, so right now we have one in the budget, the 2021 budget, one full-time paid firefighter medic position. we've had that person on staff for a number of years. And he left, one of them left, and we hired a new person. So we do have still one person. What we did, though, in answer to Paul's, real concern about not having the coverage, is I authorized him to go ahead and hire through the end of this calendar year, starting, what was it, September?
It was the end of September.
Yeah.
or
Just to get
September
us through,
13th.
because we were not going to be able to handle emergency calls. I authorized a part-time person through December 31st. He is hoping to transition that individual into this full-time position that's listed there.
Okay, so to be clear, we did at one time have another full-time position. So
We
maybe
still do.
Yeah, two paid staff, myself, the fire marshal, and then the paid full-time firefighter medic.
And this
I'm
would be an
looking at-
additional one, so we would have,
Okay, so that's what I'm getting. We're actually adding another
Yes.
full-time
Yeah.
position. So what is that? We didn't need it or have it doing jobs before. Now what is this person going to be doing? And the answer sounds like he's going to be doing what volunteers used to do. Is that,
Partly, but a lot of it is, okay, with the post-COVID world we live in, I encourage each of you to come stop by down there and see what we've got going on. We've got a lot more equipment to maintain, a lot more sanitation, a lot more stuff. And we keep getting more and more regulations put on us through NFPA, and it's too much for one or two people to handle. The reports, like Paul said, are going to computerized reports. It takes time for people to get in there and do it, and if they're not done right, it costs the city money, so that the paid person would be doing some of that. The grant writing, all the different things that fall on Paul. So he can do his job, like we have to do our annual pump tests. They have somebody come down that we contract to do with triannual pump tests, right? They come down, well, you still have to have somebody go out there to run the engine for the guy to do his pump tests. And that if he's dropping everything in the middle of his day to go do that, then he can't get his job done. So there's plenty of stuff to do, and there's hose maintenance. Every piece of fire hose we have has to be inspected and pressure tested every year. Our SCBA's, our air packs, have to be inspected and tested every year. The bottles, the dates have to be checked. They have to be sent out and be hydrostatically tested.
okay, I'll believe you. We're on up against the clock.
I
Okay.
can go on and on. Sorry.
That's right.
Ambulance inventory, I mean, there's
All right,
plenty.
that's the question. And then one quick question. I asked this earlier. I haven't gotten an answer. There was an incident on the lake this year. People in distress. They needed rescuing. Fire department shows up in a truck. We need a boat. Do we have ability to rescue somebody on the lake? Is that?
There have been cases where we have needed local people to borrow their equipment. We were told years ago by city council, and this is years ago, when I first started, that we can't respond to every call. Unfortunately, we, as volunteers, as firefighters and medics, in our mind, that's not right. So we do what we can. We've actually had to recruit some Coast Guard guys on one call to jump in a canoe and go save somebody on the lake. We've had multiple calls where we've needed equipment that we just aren't budgeted for.
Yeah, I think that's something in the budget that council should take up with, if you guys agree with that, because
Absolutely.
I've seen that on the lake twice now in the last 3 years where people were in distress, and thank God a Forest Service vehicle with their skiff come by and they were able to go out and do this otherwise.
That was actually one of our guys.
Yeah, okay.
He went and got it from the Forest Service, but it was one of our volunteers.
I think he stole it.
Oh, there you go.
He commandeered it, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to wrap up real quick here. I had a couple of questions, and I had emailed Paul about them, and I'm just going to rattle them off, and potentially, Paul, could you email them to Helen or Susan so they could go out to all the council
Absolutely.
members? Okay. So I was curious about the balance of the vehicle acquisition fund for the fire department, just where that stands right now, and so if you can just answer that one in.
Give or take a couple $1,000s. It's around, I think, February of 2020, I think it was around the $450,000 mark.
Okay,
And I
thanks.
think we started with $63,000 before 2012, and then we started the ambulance billing in 2012.
Right.
So about give or take 450.
Okay, and you answered you answered a question. I was wondering how the ambulance billing was working. It sounds like it's working good. Could you send us a note on the age of all the vehicles that you've listed in your PowerPoint? And which ones are going to need replacement and when for capital projects?
Yes, yeah. So the two that we're looking at replacing next year is a 1997 Ford ambulance, and then our 1996 Cupcake.
That was the 96.
96, the harbor vehicle that we use, that
Okay.
Chief Hicks sunk.
Yeah, I was gonna say it would probably be lasting longer if he hadn't. Anyway, yeah, just interested in that. And then two, my other thought was if you have additional staff, isn't that going to allow you to offer more training classes and recruitment opportunities?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. That's it. Anybody? Okay, Mr. Baylor.
And I had a note here. I wonder, maybe there's no effect at all, but do the calls go up? Do a lot more calls during the fishing season to the canneries? In other words, is that a big user? And if it is that something for us to consider about maybe getting a little chip in from the canneries if we're going over there a lot? Maybe it's not, but you don't need to tell us now, but think about that. That's why we passed the alcohol tobacco tax, because it's impacting our hospitals. So just something to think about.
And then also, we've been billing $500 a run since 2012, and this year we'll be increasing our surcharge, our fees to about $750 to kind of get us average with what the rest of the state of Alaska is doing. And then nationwide, it's about $1,000 an ambulance run, give or take, depending on the level of service. So we'll be bumping our insurance rates up, our billing rates up a little bit.
Thank you.
All good? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks to all the volunteers. Please express our gratitude, and it was very informative, so.
Thank you for allowing us the time. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
All volunteers.
Susan, do you want to take a small break?
Sure.
Okay. We'll, I can't do math.
Tell them they don't have to pay any property tax, have half.